Hi, welcome to Think Human. I'm Chris, and in this video I want to talk about a really good way to learn, or a way that I learn about the world. So I'm absolutely obsessed and passionate about learning about the world and how everything in it works. And so over time you kind of find ways of what's the most best efficient way to learn about the actual world, because now we have such abundance of information in every possible field you could imagine. Essentially, with the brains we have right now, it is impossible to learn deeply about every subject and to really have detailed knowledge of every individual subject that interests you. So that's why we see things like a person dedicating their whole life to learn some kind of reproductive cycle of some kind of insect in a jungle somewhere. Like hundreds of years ago, you couldn't imagine having a job like that. That's absurd. You spend your whole life studying how some bugs have sex. But like here we are, and we go so detailed into different specific fields that there is just so much to know, and we create more and more knowledge today than we did ever before in history in very short periods of time. So how, if there's so much information, how could you possibly learn anything meaningful if you're interested in a lot of things? Like for me, example, I guess in sciences, astrophysics is one of the things I'm really interested in. Computer science, artificial intelligence, biology, philosophy, psychology, biotechnology, all really fascinating things, and many more things that, I'm not so passionate about, but still really interesting, like engineering and, whatever different kinds of fields, linguistic, the world is fascinating. And I think pretty much every subject or field that we get into, on a superficial level, it might seem like, oh, this might not be interesting, but pretty much everything that you go into, it's absolutely fascinating how deeply you can learn and study something. So the best method that I have found is to the way that I learn and look at information. First of all, I try to find the best sources. So you can look at different lectures, and some speakers, you can tell that they're just some bookworms. They don't really think themselves really much. They just spout a bunch of information, and that's boring to listen to. You have to find the people who like really in tune with what they're talking about and really passionate about what they're talking about. That's best to listen to, and that makes you remember it way more and arises some curiosity in you as well. And those are the kinds of people who can really explain the subject for you. Then it's also the thing of what's worth learning and what is not learning. Like, for example, when I learn about something in astrophysics, some kind of phenomena, whatever is happening, I don't necessarily memorize what year it was detected, like who was the person detecting it, like the history and story behind it. Like, I really don't actually care about it. It might be really interesting, but I don't need to memorize that. What I care about is the big picture, the concept behind it. Like, what does it actually mean? Like, when you learn about the planet or black holes or whatever, like, what's the underlying principle behind it? Like, learning about gravity, like, what does it actually do? Like, you don't need to learn every single equation about it and each way that they can be arranged. What you need to understand is the general idea. Strong bodies attract other bodies, and how it all interacts and works together, to kind of build some easy to understand rule about what you're hearing and what you're putting in your head. So I think that's really important. Like, also with history, like, there's so many fascinating events and episodes in history. In our history, so many strange, wonderful, crazy, awesome things have happened. But for me, it's kind of like reading a storybook for entertainment, because if you know enough about biology and psychology, then you can kind of already get the idea that human beings are crazy, we explore a lot, we do weird, interesting, wonderful things, and so then you can assume that of course there are gonna be wars and some crazy situations and whatever happened. Of course, history is wonderful, and absolutely not saying anything bad about, people studying in it, because it is fascinating and I love it, absolutely. I'm just saying, if you're trying to build a picture of the universe, if your goal is really to understand the world we're living in, the universe, then you don't need to know every single detail, but what is useful is knowing the underlying principle, like what does it actually mean. And I don't think memorizing every detail about it isn't necessarily useful or even needed. You can very well do without, and then you can build yourself this kind of picture of the world, puzzle piece by puzzle piece, and eventually put them together. And the more knowledge you have, the more you can yourself kind of come up with new solutions and new possibilities of what the world might be. The more you know, the more you can figure out and think of things that you don't even need to read a book for it. You can just figure it out in your own head. If you have this piece of information, you can put them together and figure out something new about the world. And I think that's really useful kind of tool and ability to cultivate and develop to really understand the world. So this is just a really short video of how I learn things. Like for me, most important thing is just trying to grasp and understand how the world works. We're probably really far away from really understanding how the world works. What we know right now might be just a fraction of what's actually there. If given that there might be actually infinite amount of universes, what are the universes in the nature of time, everything, like the universe that we're learning right now might be absolutely arbitrary. Like, because we might have infinite amount of universes that have different laws of physics. So there isn't anything universal or special about the world we are in currently, but it's still, you know, that's all we have for now. But it's amazing to think, like, how much do we really know? That's fascinating to think. So just some thoughts. If you have any ideas, please leave them down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching and take care.